Do you believe it can be, put aside the facts of this particular case, can it be an impeachable offense to abuse your power when you're President of the United States?
I think that the charge of abuse of power is so vague and so widespread that any president of the United States could have been brought up on that charge. In this case, I think it's just really baseless because it deals with a Ukrainian call, the transcript of which everybody has. Everybody can judge for themselves. And frankly, I've looked at it as a former prosecutor. I don't see any abuse of power. When we dealt with President Clinton 21 years ago, there were some firm crimes. There was obstruction of justice. There was perjury, subornation of perjury. And the fact is that President Clinton had testified under oath, and he'd lied. And there were people in prison at the time, both in the military and in the civilian corps, who had done exactly the same thing under exactly the same circumstances, but they were in jail. So when you contrast that you could justify that as an abuse of power or a crime. In this case, I don't see a crime at all.
So fair enough. There's a clear distinction between, on the one hand, the Clinton impeachment, on the other hand, the Trump administration impeachment, in the fact that they did not allege a crime in these two articles of impeachment. On the other hand, in the case of William Joseph Clinton, while there were crimes alleged, in effect, ultimately he lost his bar membership as a practical matter for perjury. There was no accusation that what he did, the wrongdoing he did, was misusing his office in order to continue himself in office, which under the, as you know, the Federalist Papers, that's exactly what impeachment was going to. Is there a situation, put aside again the facts of this case, where a President of the United States could ask a foreign power to help him continue in office that would be impeachable? Well,
in this case, the president didn't really do that, did he? He asked the president of Ukraine to help us unlock some corruption and to discover corruption, whether the Bidens were involved or anything else. Ukraine was notably one of the most corrupt countries in the world. And as it affected the United States, we were giving hundreds of millions of dollars to Ukraine, something that, frankly, wasn't done under the Obama administration. But we were giving them that money, and in order to put ties on the money, he wanted to make sure that it was being spent correctly. You could say the Democrats have said that's an abuse of power. I personally don't see it. But again, it depends on which party in the House of Representatives is in control. And they could virtually call any president in the history of the country guilty of abuse of power.
And also, as we're seeing, which party is in control in the Senate as well. It goes both ways. And I want to go to exactly that point because, of course, President Trump is on trial in some sense in this proceeding. Also, I wonder if our entire system of government is on trial. That is to say, the American people are watching it. And if you look back in 1999, when there was the trial of President Clinton, and you look today, it's almost as if people are saying exactly the same things, just switching depending on whether they have an R or a D after their name.
I think many of the arguments are identical, without a doubt. In fact, many of the speeches are identical, except they're being said by somebody else. So you're absolutely right. But again, I have to contrast the underlying foundation of these charges. And in this case, I'm sorry, there's no crime alleged. Back then, there were specific crimes alleged. And when the founders drafted the Constitution, basically, they were saying it's high crimes, misdemeanors, and then they specified bribery or treason. Now, you don't have any of that. In fact, the Democrats have been charging this president since the day he got elected and saying that they wanted impeachment. They had spent 2 years on a foolish goose hunt for collusion with Russia. That came to nowhere. There's been this Ukrainian thing. There was the firing of Comey. There were the firing of some of these other people. All of those were within the power of the President of the United States, and they could be interpreted in any way the majority wanted them to be.
So as a former member of the House of Representatives and a former Speaker of the House, are you concerned that we are lowering the bar on impeachment overall? That we'll just have an impeachment almost with every president now? It's almost a political tool that you turn to.
David, I think that's a danger. Look, there were a lot of people that thought Bill Clinton should never have been impeached. They said it was basically about sex.
By the way, President Trump said that today in his news conference. He said Clinton should never have been impeached.
Well, I was on the other side of that, so I guess I have to disagree with him. But the fact is that there were real crimes. Now there are no crimes, and so you have to ask yourself, well, if we're going to use this one as a bar, yes, every president from now on could be impeached.